Yo, what's going on? It's Terrell, Hall of Fame, D-Line, tbkc, and all that sweet, beautiful, wonderful shit. Um, well, it's been a heck of a week or so. I guess I'll be on the road tomorrow. Um, Sometimes things happen and you just take the good with the bad. It's been great. I've been actually stranded for a while. It's a long story and there's some legal stuff pending. Not me in trouble, but I'm actually filing some civil suits against some people who did me dead wrong. So I won't talk about it on here as at the advice of my attorney, but definitely left me stranded and in a bad situation and fraud and all those good things. But it's a blessing to be safe. It's a blessing to spend a week with my grandkids, uh, bonding with my daughter, and it is what it is. All right, let's talk about it. Now, many of you have tried to get to this point of understanding, and we always talk about how to break a dog down, and you've heard me do similar videos of this, but the importance of movement. I've even seen judges, and I'm not trying to shit on any of the judges. A lot of these guys are my friends, but not understanding the true meaning of kinetic motion, you know what I mean? And understanding the fact that once you take the dog out of a standstill position, you truly see everything. And this is what I mean for those who don't understand, and I'll explain it. When you see a dog stacked, right, his legs might look very, very straight in the front. Might have great posture. He's stacked up, so anybody who's worth their, whatever, will stack a dog and make his top line good. Um, they'll set the rear that you can't tell whether the dog is cow hawked or not, or if there's any issues with the rear. This is the weird thing about that. I've even seen judges comment on this, and they're wrong. I'm just going to tell you they're wrong. If a dog is fully extended, right, one of the ways that you can tell from a standing position, right, if a dog probably has a high rear. Of course, you see those dogs where it looks like they're super extended. But I'm going to tell you something about the 90 degree with the hawk and it going straight up and down. That can be a lie. This is why. You can actually change the way that your dog is standing. Put the hocks at a 90 degree, where that's for those of you who don't, the layman term is right there, that part, the ankle, the the ankle leading up to the knee, that part, it would be straight, you know what I mean? So what they do is they pull the foot back, and you can look at the angle to make it straight. But this is something that most people don't know about that. Also, if you wanted to lower the rear, you don't have to. People always think of pulling the foot back. You don't have to pull the foot. Pull the leg back. Because you have to remember how the hips work. The hips is shifting. You can keep that at a 90 degree angle, pull the leg back further, keeping it at a 90 degree. And look, as you pull this back, if the rear is high, look what happens as you pull it back. It levels. You go up, it starts to go that way. But you're keeping it perfectly straight. And I'm doing it with my hand, of course, but that's the way the rear works. A lot of people just, their first indicator, especially if they're sort of like been taught that way, but they don't pay attention, is that just because that's at a 90 degree means, oh, it's perfect. No, one of my indicators as a judge from watching people stack is if it's pulled appropriately and this is the dog's natural stack, that dog will be resting very easily on the back paw. So when you see a dog stacked, look to see how the back paw looks. And this is a small indicator, and I'll go more into it in the motion. But the thing about the back paw is if the extension is a little bit off, one way or the other, and you rarely ever see that the paw is pushed forward, that would mean that the dog's rear is like jacked up and they're trying to, jack low, and they're trying to jack it up. That rarely ever happens, especially in bullies. But what you'll see is on the back paw, it looks like that the dog is up on its toes. So it doesn't look like they're resting firmly on those back paws. See, if it's great structure, they'll be resting firmly, even weight distribution in a stack. This is the way that you can tell the stack is appropriate from the back end. It's because when they're overextended, it looks like they're up on their tiptoes. So they pulled the dog to the point that he's leaning forward and he's coming up, for lack of a better term, on the toes instead of on the foot. So when you see them and it looks like it's pulling forward and you can see the rear paw and it looks like they're more up on their toes than resting firmly on the back paws, it looks like that they, in jiu-jitsu terms, they can be a little light in the rear, and that means that they're leaning so far forward that if you give them a nudge, they'll actually fall forward. That's not the way it should be. If that dog is firm on all four paws, it doesn't matter. Literally, a dog who is stacked properly, you can move him a little bit to the side. You can shift him a little bit in the front. You can actually feel his rear and give it a little bit of weight. He's not going to go anywhere because he has now I'm not talking about shoving, but I'm talking about very, very light movement. What'll happen, and I'm going to tell you this, if you have those dogs that are overextended in the back end, if you've ever seen the judge grab both, let's just call them ass cheeks, when they do that, if you see the dog sort of move forward, shift forward, he wasn't firm on his rear. It's no weight there. That little bit of a push by the judge has moved him totally forward. This is why you want a base. You know, some of you who've played sports or different other things, they always talk about your base with your feet being solid on your base so you're not easily moved and you're in your power alley. These are the same things with a dog. That dog should be firm on all four paws. Not anything leaning off of leaning more weight to the front, more weight to the back. And if the dog's leaning to either side, that's really screwed up. But also in the front end, it can happen too. Where if you're shifted so hard, now you'll rarely ever see the dog get not these dogs, super light in the front. But what they will do is they don't have great balance in the front, because they'll shift the dog backwards. And a lot of times why they're shifting the dog backwards is probably an issue with the front legs, to where they're trying to stack the legs, maybe to turn the feet a certain way. So they'll have the dog raise up a little bit, turn his feet. And after stacking enough, the dog knows not to move. When you've seen handlers do this, where they're lifting the paw up and setting it down. With enough training, the dog will set his feet like that, and they'll stay there. But the problem with this is that's not natural. Along with other issues, when you see them from the front and they look, to a trained eye, you can see that the forearm distribution is wrong. And what I mean by that is, you've heard me talk about the shortened forearm. You can see, those of us who are truly studying the dogs like that, you can definitely see it. The forearm is disproportionate to the lower leg. This is why motion is so great. And I said, look, I went 8 minutes without talking about motion. But now here we are, and we're going to talk about motion for 2 minutes. The reason why motion is so great is this. No matter the way you can contort that dog's body during this process, none of that works once you're in motion. If that forearm is shortened, that forearm actually does not have good range of motion. And you might not think about it, but think about how a dog really moves. They're driving forward. They're reaching. What happens with the dogs with the shorter forearms is their legs are sort of stiff and they sort of swing them out a little bit, and they're not really reaching. It's just like more how you would do a crutch. Because a crutch has no bend to it. So if you see a person on crutches, how do they move the crutch forward? They swing them out further ahead. Once it's on the ground, then they swing forward. This is sort of how the dog is moving in the front end. You won't notice a very, very smooth flow of the way that they move in the front end. This is a problem. And it tells you an issue. And it tells the judge an issue. And this is the way you can identify it. It tells us an issue that this is not a show dog. Next up, the top line starts to fall apart in motion if the dog is not well built. Reason being is, although you can stack a dog with a high rear to make his rear look good. In order for him to move naturally, the dog has to go into motion. It goes to its natural movements. And its natural movements, this is a lot of times why some of the worst videos, the worst shots that you'll see of these dogs are when they take them around the ring. Because as you've seen now in the show ring, at least half of the dogs, when they start to move, their asses go up. The top line goes off. These are two automatic flaws already. High rear, bad top line. That's automatic. It basically all but disqualifies you from being a champion, if we're judging it correctly. Next up in that category is sometimes the dogs is cowhawk. So you'll see bad movement in the rear. If it's really messed up in the rear end assembly, you'll start to see that because it's not well put together, sometimes no bend, straight stifles in the rear. Some dogs it's because of injuries like what we would call a torn ACL. They have torn CCLs. When this happens, the dog generally has a wobbly motion in the rear end. If you're watching a well put together dog, it should move very, very smoothly. Even when you look at the rear end, y'all heard me say this a million times, it looks like you should be able to sit a glass of Merlot right there on that dog's ass or on his back and it not spill because they move so effortlessly. The best dogs move effortlessly. You can really focus in, and when I'm judging, I really, especially as they go around the ring, I love to focus in on the top line. Because if that back, from the shoulders to the rear, gives you the illusion that it's not moving at all, this animal is very, very well put together. But if something is wrong in the front, you'll start to see the shoulders do a wobble, which therefore, if the front end is wobbling, the back end is not going to be steady. So the dog's movement sort of is a wobble, wobble, wobble type of thing. I know that's not a professional way to say it, but you guys get what I mean. It's not smooth at all. It looks like the dog is sort of jerking from side to side as it moves like I'm doing right now, instead of a very, very smooth gait. But as a trained eye, you can start to see where the problem is coming from that's throwing this motion off, and it makes the job way, way easier. Stacking is just for looks. I'm going to promise you that. What I look for when a dog is stacking in general is I look at the basic things. You know what I mean? I can get the features of his head. I can get a look into his eyes to see if the eyes are set correctly, if the shape is correctly, if the color is correctly, if there are any defects anywhere in the face. I can get a good look at the nostrils. I can get a good look, at the muscle tone and different things up closer. I can check the testicles. I can do all of these things, but it still won't matter as much as when that dog gets moving, because now I get to see the overall package. The first part of the test was, okay, you've got these looks and you've got a lot of things that I like. Let's do the test now. Let's see if those things fall apart. And it really does. Showing a dog is that simple. They make it overzealous when they keep talking about the term breed type. Breed type is quite simply how well a dog fits the standard. It's not what they say it is. So yes, when we're looking, a dog is beautiful. And we've gotten trapped in that thing of, oh, the dog is beautiful. And if you say anything about this dog that's so beautiful, you're hating. That's a trap, because ultimately we have to break all these dogs down. We have to make honest analysis on if this dog is what it says it's supposed to be, or are they failing? You know what I mean? And are they failing? And I'm going to tell you guys, to be honest, I've watched a lot of shows. I've seen a lot of people put their dogs in the ring, and really 75% of them don't deserve championships. They don't deserve show wins. My rule is if I find issues with the dog, and I'm talking about basically, and this is the same way I'll be instructing, the judges, and I'll be relying on who's a better judge than me, the legendary judge Skip Miller. You know what I mean? I'll be relying on him, and honestly, I want to have a sit down and talk with Ron Ramos and pick his brain some, because these guys go back 40, 50 years. I know Skip not quite 50. Ron literally probably goes back damn near 50 with dogs. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of knowledge there to be gained. And when we talk about these topics, I've talked to some great dog men throughout the years. Some of them, unfortunately, are not with us anymore. But it's great to pick different dog men's minds, not only from these breeds that we do, but also other breeds. I talked to Rottweiler breeders. I've talked to Beagle breeders and handlers. I've talked to a Westminster winner of what was that? The Shih Tzu, I do believe it was. Did she have? I believe it was the Shih Tzu. She had Westminster winner in class. I don't think it was best in show, but winner in class. Older lady over there in Lakeland, Florida, and she gave me a ton of information and a ton of tips and a ton of knowledge. But where we're failing at is we're failing in a complete overall dog. It's not a participation sport. There are some dogs that you guys will like. I can name quite a few of them that you would like that would be disqualified as far as being a true champion if it was above board like most other breeds do. High rears should never be champions. I'm just going to be honest with you. A high rear dog, now you can call it whatever you want to call it as far as your other terms, a tool or this or that or the other. But to hand a dog that has a high rear a championship is not helping the breed. Dogs with the shortened forms, they shouldn't be champions, and I see a lot of those that are great grand champions. Really, really bad top lines. Either way you go, you know what I mean. Should not be. When we're talking about our champions should be, and this is something that most people are not really catching on to. But our champion should be a dog that is close to perfect to the standard. Our grand champions, and I don't want to hear this, there's no such thing as perfection. Our grand champions should push that bar even further. If the champions are 90%, the grand champions should be 95% of what we would really be looking for. When you look at a grand champion American bully or any dog, you should look at that dog going around the ring and be like, yeah, dog, that's it. This is how this dog is supposed to look. It should never be, well, he bad as hell, but I know he got a high rear, but he's going to make a great breeding tool. Well, I know he's got breathing issues, but no. And that's something that we'll talk about in another video as to what what you see with your eyes is not the only test of breed type. You know what I mean? There's 3 elements to this, and that's the temperament, the health, and overall function of the dog's body that correlates with the health. And then you have, what you see. And those 3 components make the complete dog. And we have to get to those points because you can be disqualified in the ring for bad temperament. And when I mean bad temperament, it's not necessarily always that your dog is biting a judge. You know what I mean? Or, I've heard recently that a dog bit a handler in the ring or something like that. Of course, that's a disqualification, but also to a trained judge and someone who really knows these dogs. If your dog is showing a total lack of confidence, his tail is tucked between his leg, he's acting very scared, he's, defecating and peeing all over the ring, these type of things, that is not what this breed is. This breed is a confident breed. It's not a dog it should be a very, very comfortable breed. And what I mean by comfortable, when you start talking about, oh yeah, it's a companion breed, that's a story for another day. But for the most part, with human beings, it should act very, very companion-ish. And these dogs, at the very least, should be not scary, even when they're in the ring. And that's because when their origins are dogs that might have a little bite to them, might not like dogs quite as much as the other. So even now, think about this. Even in that scope, when we start talking about the pit bull instead of the American bully, a pit bull is not supposed to be scary. That's pretty much a disqualification. A pit bull is not supposed to be running around with his tail tucked in between his legs when he sees other dogs and different things and looking around nervously and those things. That's pretty much a disqualification. So with this breed originally deriving from the pit bull and Amstaff and those type of characteristics, and that's what it's based off of, and we're not going to get into the long story of what we believe could have been added elsewhere. This dog should still be very, very confident, and maybe it wants to snap on another dog every now and then. You don't want them overly aggressive, but you don't punish the dog. If I'm in the ring and I got, 4 or 5 males lined up, and you got one that's a little bit tensed up and he's staring the other ones down, and leaning a little bit and showing like he want to go do something, I don't penalize him for that, because I understand if we're going by the breed standard, he fits into the breed standard. He may not like these other dogs. Now, if he's to the point where he's barking uncontrollably and trying to get to the other dog, that's another thing, and we have to bring even safety into the ring and dismiss the dog, because you don't want to put it on the handler to have that kind of pressure that he's going to be wrestling with a dog who wants to fight other dogs and is getting very aggressive about this, to hold him in the ring. These are all things that in future videos and future lives we're going to talk about. As we break this breed down, we have to get better in every facet. The temperament testing, the health testing, and then our community has to get a no nonsense idea of what confirmation is. And when I say confirmation, I do mean confirmation. I don't mean to get into an argument about what people like. You know what I mean? Oh, don't be hate. No, if your dog does not have health, if your dog does not have confirmation, then that's two of the major. That's